Welcome to another episode of our video series of the mechanics of human cognition. It's great to be back with you. It's a fascinating thing to consider. We spend our entire lives navigating a world that, in truth, we can never fully know. Today, we're going to unpack this powerful cognitive distinction between the world as it is and the world our brain lets us see. And I think you'll find this single idea can fundamentally change how you think. So, for decades, a core idea in biology was exactly this. The brain sits up in its command center, just issuing these one-way orders to the body. And this wasn't taught as a theory, you understand. This was considered a fundamental truth. It was a neat, simple, and very powerful model for how we function, and it shaped medicine for years. And then, the whole model just collapsed. New research revealed that communication is profoundly bidirectional. The body, our gut, our environment, they're all in this constant feedback loop, with the brain actively shaping its so-called commands. A once solid scientific fact was suddenly revealed to be just, well, an incomplete model. And this kind of thing happens all the time, not just in science, but in life, which really makes you wonder, how can we get better at navigating a world where truth is constantly evolving? To handle this, we really need a better cognitive toolkit. And a surprisingly elegant one comes from the Turkish language. It makes this incredibly sharp distinction between two concepts that we in the English-speaking world often just mush together: the ultimate truth and our own personal perceived reality. So on one side, you have Hakikat. This is the ultimate, objective, complete truth of the universe. Think of it as the territory itself. And then on the other side, you have Gerçek, and that's our perceived reality. It's our personal, subjective, and crucially incomplete map of that territory, one that our brain builds for us just so we can function. The origin of the word hakikat actually gives us a really big clue here. Its Arabic root suggests something permanent, absolute, something engraved, as if in stone. This is the underlying physics of the universe, the complete system as it actually is, totally independent of anyone observing it. It's everything. And that's exactly why it's unknowable to a finite mind like ours. Now, Gerçek, in stark contrast, comes from a root that means that which is witnessed. And this just perfectly captures its nature, doesn't it? It's not the absolute truth, it's a projection of that truth, one that's been filtered through our senses, our experiences, and all our biases. You could think of it as your own unique, personal user interface for reality. Okay, so if our personal reality, our Gerçek, is inherently incomplete, how do we ever improve it? How do we make our map a better and better representation of the territory? Well, the key is a cognitive tool that we often misunderstand, and sometimes even fear, and that tool is doubt. We tend to think of doubt as a weakness, right? As uncertainty. But from a cognitive science perspective, functional doubt is an absolutely crucial error correction signal. It's the little alert system that tells us, hey, there's a mismatch between our current map and some new data from the territory. It's not a failure of belief. It's the very engine of intellectual progress. And this process builds into a really powerful cognitive cycle. First, we operate with our stable reality, our Gerçek. Then, some kind of anomaly pops up, a piece of data that just doesn't fit. That triggers functional doubt. And that doubt is what pushes us to form a new, more accurate reality that can account for the new information. And then, we just repeat. It's this iterative process that keeps our worldview from becoming rigid and outdated. This quote, this is a perfect example of what happens when that cycle breaks down. A statement like this isn't born from a lack of intelligence, not at all. It's born from a complete and total lack of doubt. It's what happens when we become so certain of our current reality, our Gerçek, that the very possibility of something new is just completely closed off. And this leads us to a really counterintuitive but powerful insight. What if having a flawed, incomplete reality isn't a bug in our cognitive design? What if it's actually the most important feature? See, our brain isn't built to perfectly replicate the entire world. It's built for effective action within the world. The so-called flaws and the gaps in our perceived reality are precisely what make it a useful, energy-efficient tool. Think about it this way. A perfectly clear, flawless sky, that's a desert sky. It offers no life-giving water. It's the imperfections, the clouds, the pressure systems, that create the potential for rain. And it's the same with soil, right? Perfectly sterile, uniform soil is dead. It can't support growth. It's that complex, messy, imperfect blend of minerals and microbes that allows life to flourish. Our cognition is really no different. So the crucial point here is that our reality is a model. It's a map. And a map is useful not because it's a perfect replica. I mean, a one-to-one scale map would be the size of the world and completely useless. No, a map is useful precisely because it leaves things out. It simplifies complexity so that we can actually navigate.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for how we interact with each other? Well, understanding this framework can fundamentally change how we communicate with people who are, for all intents and purposes, running on entirely different models of reality.
This right here is the social consequence of our cognitive architecture. The unknowable ultimate truth, the Hakikat, is at the center. But each and every one of us is just perceiving a different slice of it. We're all constructing our own personal Gerçek, and no two are identical because no two people have the same history, the same focus, or the same sensory data coming in. This shift is absolutely profound. When you truly internalize this, disagreement just transforms. It stops being a battle to determine whose reality is right. Instead, it becomes a process of exchanging data. The question is no longer, why are you wrong? But rather, what are you seeing that I'm not? Show me your map.
And the applications here are incredibly practical. This isn't just some philosophical exercise, it's a real tool. It enhances empathy because it pushes us to genuinely try to understand another person's operating model. It reduces conflict by sidestepping those useless battles over who's right. And it fosters true collaboration by letting us synthesize different models into something more complete. So let's end by turning this lens inward, because maybe the most powerful application of this framework is on ourselves. It encourages a state of intellectual humility and an active curiosity about the limitations of our own perspectives. It prompts us to ask the most productive question of all: which of my own deeply held realities, which parts of my Gerçek are no longer serving me and might just be ready for an update?